It's time for Media Meltdowns. Well, the US has destroyed Iran's nuclear facility, and the president has been clear for a very long time that Iran cannot hold a nuclear weapon. But according to MSNBC, when Iran chants death to America, oh, well, they don't really mean it.
Why is it a foundational issue for Trump that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon? Why is this something that the U.S. should be involved in? Why are we allied with Israel?
He says because they chant death to America.
They chant death to America. I went to Iran in 2014. I was sitting at a rally. These young guys were chanting death to America. I had a minder. I said, what are they saying? They're saying death to America. They finished the chant, and two young men came over and said, are you American? I said, yes. We want to welcome you to our country. We love American culture and love American movies. They wanted to talk about all these things. Iran is the most Western nation in the whole Middle East.
And Margaret Brennan, host of CBS News' Face the Nation, had to be reminded by Marco Rubio of why Iran could not hold nuclear weapons, and the fact that the regime had everything they needed to was enough to justify the strike.
Are you saying there that the United States did not see intelligence that the Supreme Leader had ordered weaponization?
That's irrelevant. I think that question being asked on the media, that's an irrelevant question.
No,
they have everything they need to build a weapon.
That is the key point in U.S. intelligence assessments. You know that.
No, it's not.
Yes, it was.
No, it's not.
The political decision had not been made.
I know that better than you know that, and I know that that's not the case.
But I'm asking you whether the order was given.
And the people who say that, it doesn't matter if the order was given. They have everything they need to build nuclear weapons. Why would you bury things in a mountain 300 feet under the ground?
Right.
Why would you bury why do they have 60% enriched uranium? You don't need 60% enriched uranium. The only countries in the world that have uranium at 60% are countries that have nuclear weapons.
Marco Rubio reminding CBS of what is relevant. But the New York Times, well, they might deserve some credit here. Let me know what you think. New York Times has been covering the most critical parts of America's historic strike on Iran's nuclear sites, reporting on Pete Hegseth's briefing. The New York Times journalist wrote, in the briefing, Hegseth referred to B-2 pilots as our boys on those bombers, yet both men and women have been trained to fly them. Well done, New York Times. Excellent point that both men and women can fly planes. But it was LA Sheriff's Department's post that really takes the cake. The LA Sheriff's Department posted condolences to families in Iran who were, quote, impacted by Iran's nuclear sites getting blown up. In a shared post, they say, our hearts go out to the victims and the families impacted by the recent bombing in Iran, the bombing that did not hurt anyone. This post has now been edited and deleting the condolences. And then there's the hosts of The View. Joy Behar seriously questioned why Donald Trump didn't tell the Iranians he was going to bomb their nuclear sites.
Did he keep it a secret for the surprise? The surprise version?
I mean, absolutely, the diversion, and you saw the way that all indications were that B-2s were flying towards Guam. Everybody thought, okay, so we're getting in position to be ready. They wanted to have some element of surprise. Let's face it, there wasn't really much element of surprise. I mean, this had been in the works for a long time, but to have the final moment to be a surprise.
Joining us now is Hillary Fordwich, president and founder of Stromark. Hillary, great to see you. What an extraordinary few days in the Middle East. President Trump waited and then acted with courage, taking out Iran's nuclear facilities. But what do you make of the mainstream media's coverage? I mean, you have the New York Times making their coverage about political correctness, and the hosts of The View seem to have no idea why the element of surprise was just so crucial in this operation.
Well, absolutely. And Gabriella, I will say this is Trump speed. And when you saw like Jasmine Crockett, when you saw these people like on The View, as you mentioned, what did they want? They wanted a debate about a surprise. Yeah, that's a really smart thing to do. And actually, something that I find very disappointing is how much more anti-American can you be than not be behind our men and women of the special forces that flew over there in harm's way, went on this secret mission? How can you not be behind them and not congratulate them for a successful mission, coming back and getting back to US soil safely? What I find is absolutely amazing, if you think about it, Gabriella, is that Winston Churchill said that, the truth has to be escorted by a convoy of lies. President Trump didn't even lie. Remember, he said he would decide within 2 weeks.
Correct.
He didn't say he wasn't going to decide. So I thought it was brilliantly done, brilliant deception and brilliant element of surprise. I just wish they'd be more American and get behind our troops.
Very well said. Well, you mentioned Jasmine Crockett. She says that Donald Trump is more dangerous to America than the illegals who are in the United States. And she's gone on this rant, furious that Donald Trump didn't consult with her before bombing Iran's nuclear sites.
So I know they may claim we law and order, blah, blah, blah. So go get the undocumented people and let's try to ship them out. Let me tell you something. They are not the people that are putting us in harm's way. It is him and his administration that is putting us in harm's way. I am telling you right now that I legitimately have had no intel whatsoever. Zero intel as a sitting member of Congress, regardless of how you feel about me, regardless of my party affiliation. No one has consulted specifically with me or anybody in my office to give us any information.
I mean, Donald Trump has just made the world a much safer place for Western democracies. No thank you from Jasmine Crockett there. But what do you make of the Democrats' response? I mean, they are just proving to be more and more irrelevant.
Yes, absolutely. And I think when she said about the, not being safe by President Trump, I think she ought to be talk to the person that was, I think it was a woman who was actually set on fire by an illegal in the subway. That woman wasn't very safe. And all those that have suffered the crimes, those that have actually, perished. President Trump, when he had the joint session, he actually named many of those, like Laken Riley is a good example. She's dead now because of an illegal. So I think she should talk to Jasmine Crockett, should talk to some of those families and see how safe they feel. Yes, I think we're on the precipice of world peace.
Let's talk about Russia's response. We know that Russia's President Vladimir Putin slammed the attacks in Iran, saying they were unprovoked and unjustified in a meeting with Tehran's foreign minister, but didn't announce any really concrete support for his key ally in the Middle East. So we know that Moscow's a big backer of Iran, but he's not actually swung forcefully behind Russia's partner. What's your assessment of Russia's response and what can we expect from here?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's Russia's response. And I think the other thing to look at is both Russia, obviously, as you say, Putin did make those that statement, but look at the whole of the Middle East. Isn't it very interesting that none of the Arab countries whatsoever came to Iran's support at all? I think that actually says a lot. And generally, I actually look back at President Trump's trip to the Middle East and look, I bet you he was talking to all the countries he visited then, including Saudi Arabia, but not limited to Saudi Arabia, and talking to the Remember at the time, a very interesting, Gabriella, remember he didn't go to Israel. People said, why didn't he go to our major ally in the Middle East? I think it's because he was garnering all of their support so that, not about the this particular attack, but I think that at that time, he was making sure that we were well allied with the rest of the Middle East. And Putin, all it was a statement, and he was just barking like a little dog.
Yeah, excellent point. Now, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has called on China to prevent Iran from closing the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important shipping routes. So any disruption to the supply of oil would, of course, have profound consequences for the economy. But China, in particular, is the world's largest buyer of Iranian oil and has a close relationship with Tehran. And we know any attempt to disrupt operations in the Strait could send global oil prices skyrocketing. What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, I would say, yes, you're totally correct there. China actually has about 54% of the output that comes through the Strait of Hormuz. So you're right. China is far more vulnerable. I do think it's very interesting, actually, that right now Brent crude is just at $69 a barrel, and we have not seen any massive spikes. Actually, after the Israel-Iran ceasefire was announced this evening, all oil prices have remained steady. So I think after this evening, I think you're going to see some stability in the next few days. And I don't think we're going to see what a lot of the negative press, and we started out talking about the mainstream media, the mainstream predicted this terrible skyrocketing of oil prices. Hasn't happened. And now with this ceasefire, Gabriella, I don't think it will.
Let's turn to what is happening inside the United States. Kamala Harris, she's reportedly considering running for governor of California. Sources told The Hill that she's considering all her options, but she's not done with public service and is giving the race strong consideration. Now, of course, the decision by Kamala Harris to run for governor would be significant because that would mean she's not going to run for president in 2028. What do you make of this?
Well, first of all, don't forget, she actually had that would be zero votes in the primary. She was the one that dropped out first. And then all of a sudden, when she became vice president, then obviously the Democratic Party undemocratically took out Joe Biden, and then she lost the election. So her track record isn't very good. She hasn't had public support. And the other thing, Gabrielle, I think is really interesting is, did you know that she's taking July off? From what?
I did not know.
Went to Hawaii to take off time. She's always taking time off. From what? You can't take time off when you're not doing anything. I just don't think she's got a track record in terms of voting, and she's not doing anything, nor has she really achieved anything. What record is she ever going to run on? Look at the state of California. Californians have voted that state. They go to Texas, they go to Florida. It's a failing state. I don't think she has a record to run on, and nor the support.
Hilary Fordwich, president and founder of Strollmark, thank you so much for speaking with us. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure, Gabriella.